Today we embark on a transformative journey with Daria Williamson, a seasoned leader and coach who masterfully harnesses the power of strengths and positive psychology to not only make work feel less like hard work, but also to illuminate the path for countless individuals towards their authentic passions and aspirations. Daria, welcome to the show. Wonderful to speak to you again.
Hi, Brad. Great to see you.
For those who perhaps didn't listen to our previous show on the Resilience podcast or haven't met you before, in a nutshell, who are you and what do you do?
So who I am, I'm a relentless optimist and a believer in human potential and flourishing. And so what I do in the world with that is I'm a leadership and personal strengths coach and trainer. So my goal is to help people figure out what they're amazing at and love doing and how to do more of that in the world for both their life and their work.
Wonderful. And who are some of the people that you work with?
So I work one-on-one with a whole range of clients. It might be a small business owner who's needing to nurture some confidence or be a bit more clear in what kind of magic they bring to the world. I work with people in career transitions. They might have done something for 10 or 15 years. They're feeling a bit stuck. It's not fulfilling them anymore, and they want to explore what other opportunities are available. For some of them, that's staying in the same role, in the same industry, but bringing more of their strengths to what they do. They'd be really energized and engaged. And for other people, it's a complete leap into a totally different area, whether that's the role they're doing, the industry they work in. That's something that's more aligned with their values and resonates with their strengths as well. And then I also work with leadership teams in two quite different capacities. I work with emerging leaders to give them skills, really practical skills, and how to lead people well, how to do the people stuff right. And I also work with senior leaders more around their leadership presence and practice. Who do I need to be as a leader? And who do we need to be as a leadership team to lead this organization where we want it to go and make it feel like the kind of place that it needs to feel like for the right people to be attracted and to stay to do their best work.
That's fascinating and so important. I was listening to a podcast recently where this medical doctor and neuroscientist was talking about how stress actually leaks from our pores. It's not just contagious in terms of emotional contagion. You can actually sense it in an environment, which is even more reason why leaders need to practice calm, presence, all of the things you talked about. It's interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That stuff is fascinating.
So recently you released your book, Unleash Your Awesome. I love it. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how that's gone.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been firstly a dream come true for my much, much, much younger self. At primary school, I used to love creating little books, writing stories and publishing them with crayons and pens. And so writing and publishing the book was a combination of that particular dream, but it was also really personally meaningful for me for a couple of reasons. Number one, it gave me the opportunity to spread the word of personal strengths in a far more wide and broad capacity than I can working as a coach and a trainer. And also something I haven't talked about a lot with the book is actually the woman who would have been my godmother if my parents had believed in godparents. She played a huge part in actually bringing that to life. Sadly, we lost her in February 2019, but she left a legacy to my parents that they then shared with me and my brother, and that funded a huge part of actually being able to bring Unleash Your Awesome to life in the world. So I'm forever indebted to her, and so it feels really special that I could be doing something super meaningful for me that I know has a positive impact on other people, that also kind of really brings a sense of her with it.
Yes.
And I've had amazing feedback from the book. Someone told me they've launched a new program in their business because they worked through their strengths and figured out that this idea that they'd had knocking around for a couple of years actually made the best use of their strengths. And so now they're doing this new thing and absolutely loving it. I've had people share it with friends and family, partners, work colleagues, and it still feels kind of magical and dreamlike. That's something that I've put together that's so important to me, is really having a cool impact out there in the world.
Yeah. That's the magic of books and the internet, I suppose, is that you can do things at scale that you can't do one-on-one. You can't have one-on-one coaching sessions with everyone, but you can share your magic with the
Yeah.
world, as you said.
Yeah.
And the fulfillment that comes with actually knowing that someone has made some changes and they're enjoying their life a little bit more than they were before. That's what it's all about. Mm.
Yep, absolutely.
So why is it important to focus on strengths? I know personally, and through the work that I do, so many people focus on their risks or their weaknesses or their perceived shortcomings. I'd love to just dive into why focus on our strengths.
Yeah. Great question. We're wired to focus on the negative, on the threats, on the risks, on the shortcomings. It makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. What keeps us alive is being risk aware and risk averse. But we go overboard on that to the point that we forget that actually we have strengths, we have magic that we bring to the world. And, a lot of our business processes are really built around risk aversion. Try and turn your weaknesses into strengths, which I think is the greatest waste of time and energy. It's the dumbest idea we've ever had as humans, I think. Because when you focus on your weaknesses, that's draining and depleting. They don't energize you. They feel really hard. They are really hard. And so we can pour so much time and energy and effort into trying to drag, it's almost like this dead carcass up to some level of adequacy. And I think we just miss so much opportunity to put that same time, energy, and effort into building our strengths, not just what we're good at, but what lights us up when we do it, because that's the stuff that's engaging, it's energizing. We're going to feel like our best selves. We're going to be able to keep going for the long term. And also the fact that we all have really, really different strengths. And so if you and I tried to be just as good at the one thing as each other, then we miss the unique contribution each of us can make. So for me, it makes so much more sense as individuals and teams. What am I great at? What do I love doing? And how do I do more of that in a sustainable way? We're actually going to build a much more diverse community, group, team, organization, family by bringing the best of ourselves forward rather than focusing on the stuff that we're not great at. That said, we do need to know what our weaknesses are. We need to know where the risks lie. So it's like, know where the pothole is and then figure out how not to fall into it. And you do that by turning back to your strengths and saying, okay, if I have a weakness in, say, attention to detail, I can outsource it. I can potentially avoid it. If I take a job that doesn't need any attention to detail, then it doesn't even become a problem. Or potentially I can use another strength that does energize me that I'm great at, like quality. So that's about being super excited and able to put really great work out in the world. And so if I take it with a quality lens rather than I have to make sure every full stop is in the right place, I can have the same outcome using a different approach.
Interesting. So you can use your strengths as lenses through which you view a challenge and say, okay, right, I don't enjoy attention to detail. That sounds very much like me. However, I do like to produce great work. How can I reframe this situation using a strength? Or if it's really not possible, like I have to read a legal document, just outsource it, try and get some support with something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And how do you discover your strengths? And I know you've got an amazing toolkit, so please tell us a little bit about that. But, most people will have a vague sense of I'm good at creative things, or I'm good at speaking to an audience, maybe. How do we get crystal clear on our strengths?
So, thank you for the opportunity to talk about my approach. So I created a thing called the Strengths Deck. It's 75 strengths cards and we'll put a link in the show notes. You can actually download a free version for yourself.
Excellent.
It goes with a matrix, which has 5 zones on it. And it's all about how good am I at it and how much do I enjoy using this strength. And that helps you get really clear on the distinction between something you're great at and absolutely love and something you're great at and really don't ever want to do again if you can help it.
That's important.
Because it's important to get that distinction. And so that's something that people can then revisit over time, go back to it every 6 to 12 months, check in, because our strengths are dynamic. They shift and change based on where we're at in the world, the work we're doing, what's going on in our families, what we've been focusing on, dialing up or down. So different to, say, the Clifton Strengths approach from Gallup, where they say, take our assessment, you're going to get a rank ordering of strengths, and those really aren't going to change over time. So unless you have some massive, huge disruptive change in your life, these are your strengths. I'm very much more of the, think of it as players on your sports team, move them in and out, change their positions around depending on what you're facing at the time. But then there's other ways people can do it. There's the VIA Character Strengths Assessment, where it's a free online assessment. Again, it's a rank ordering, but you can get those full results for free. Strengths Profile do a great starter profile where they'll give you a snapshot of your strengths. But then you can also just think about the patterns in your life and in your work. What kinds of jobs have you gravitated towards? What do you do or wish you could do with your spare time? When you were a kid and your parents couldn't find you when it was time for dinner, what were you doing? So it's actually kind of delving back into those things and saying, well, what are the common patterns that come up? So, for example, you can always find me reading. Now, reading's not a strength, but there are some strengths that play into why I read. So there's a lot of curiosity and love of learning. I love storytelling and I'm great at it. So I appreciate a really well told story, whether that's fiction or nonfiction. And also that it plays in with your values as well. So I have this value of wanting to contribute to the world. So I devour books and then share my insights with others. And that also brings in my strengths about being able to help people see different perspectives, being able to break really complex stuff down so that people can understand it and grasp the basic concepts quickly. So it's looking at what energizes you and de-energizes you. That's going to help you figure out the stuff that you're not good at and don't enjoy. And then thinking about how you could maybe apply those things in a fresh way, in a different part of your life, or bring them to your work in a different way, or even combine different strengths together. So when I give a keynote speech, I'm leaning heavily on interpreter and storyteller. So I want to keep my audience engaged and get them really simple, clear principles that they can then go away immediately and apply. And that's because I want to see them actually take action. So there's a mobilizer strength playing in there too.
That's amazing. And I love how clearly you can articulate the strengths based on the tools that you've developed. Something I'm interested in is, why do we feel like work should be so hard? And many of us, in fact, I dare say most of us, have a limiting belief, and we think work should not be fun. When I think about my strengths, which are probably creativity, strategic thinking, speaking, it's almost like I shouldn't be spending all of my day doing those things, because there should be some really hard, difficult, strenuous stuff along the way. Any thoughts on why we have these limiting beliefs?
Oh, I so have thoughts on this. I personally blame a combination of rampant capitalism and the Protestant work ethic. So, that whole sense of you must work your guts out, you have to give your all, has kind of led to this belief of, I should feel like this is hard work. But I completely take the approach, you can work hard, but it doesn't have to feel like hard work. Because if you're bringing those genius strengths in, I love this and I'm great at it, then you will feel energized and engaged and maybe even excited and enjoy your work. And I describe what I do to people as, I've created the ideal job for myself right now, because I literally have moments every day where I stop and think, I can't believe people pay me for this. Because I feel so fulfilled and I'm having so much fun. And that feels really subversive to say, right? Because there's that overarching limiting belief, get up, go to work, slog your guts out and come home. But it doesn't have to be like that. And granted, there's an element of privilege in my position, right? Of I actually get to choose my work. I have financial stability that I can run my own business and take the risks of ups and downs.
Yeah.
But that said, you can bring your strengths to anything you do. And so even if you feel maybe locked into the job you're in, you can still bring your energizing strengths to life in ways at work and outside of work. It's not just about the time you're in the workplace. What you do with your family, your friends, and your community, that can also be a beautiful opportunity to play to your strengths and help other people play to theirs.
Yeah. I remember in my own history having had a few jobs that were particularly boring. However, I demonstrated that through some of my strengths, we could achieve really interesting outcomes. So, for example, I was working for this insurance company in London. It was painfully boring. I don't even know why I was working there. But anyway, I got the position and I was fascinated by the internet. So I said to my boss, look, did you know we could develop an intranet? This is back in the days before intranets were really things. And he was like, what's that? And I showed him. Next thing, I was developing an intranet for a huge insurance company just because I actually had the courage to say, I'm really good at this thing. I mean, processing insurance records, definitely not my thing. And just by shining through your strengths, you get to do much more interesting stuff. And actually, that's been kind of the story of my life, really. It's just going, hey, guys, did you know I can also do this? And then that helps you change trajectory. You mentioned something that's really interesting, which is the connection between values and strengths. Now, I'm fascinated by values. My next book is on values. And imagine if what you really value is aligned with your strength. That is a life in flow, isn't it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's also a flip side of it, but
Please.
Absolutely, if you can align strengths and values together, then you're in that space where you are feeling congruent. So you're not fighting an internal battle. I imagine the processing of insurance claims wasn't lining up with your values, and that was part of the reason why it was so soul-sucking. So it's missing both your strengths and your values. That said, if you get a really strong alignment between your strengths and your values, it can become a slippery slope. So I have a strength around curiosity. I freaking love learning new stuff. I'm fascinated by things. 100 tabs open on my browser because I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. I'm like a magpie. And I also have a value around curiosity of the importance of maintaining a curious stance instead of leaping immediately to knowing. So while I'm trying to gather knowledge, I try as much as possible not to be a knower. But when my curiosity strength and my curiosity value really line up, I can end up so far down the rabbit hole. A, I've forgotten why I went there in the first place.
Yes.
And B, I've got an opportunity cost here, right? Like I'm spending that time and energy, I'm investing it in following the rabbit hole, which might be very, very satisfying for me in the moment. But if it's not actually then helping me make the contribution, that's the other value that I hold really, really dear, then actually I'm doing myself and the people I work with a disservice. So it's finding the phrase that keeps coming up all the time at the moment, so clearly it's something I need to work on, is every coin has two sides. So curiosity absolutely has an upside, but there's a downside. So everything is a strength until it's not. If you lean too heavily on something, then it becomes almost like a weakness that can trip you up. And the same thing with values. We can lean so far into one value that we actually end up working against another value. And so I think it's really important to check in from time to time and say, have I got the sweet spot or do I need to make an adjustment?
That's really interesting. I never thought of it actually becoming a risk, but curiosity plus curiosity, that's a weekend wasted, you know, or a weekday. I've been there myself. So let's just think of another example. For example, a value of kindness and a strength of, say, compassion, and you end up serving everyone to the point where you're so distressed and burnt out that you can no longer function effectively.
Yeah. And we see that regularly, right? Of people who are helpers. What a beautiful role to have in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the old, put your own oxygen mask on first. You're no good, and you won't line up with your values and your strengths long term if you're burning yourself out in the short term. And so, I talk a lot about the sustainability aspect of what we're doing. So it's really important to know and lean into your genius strengths, but it's also really important to understand when to back off from them. And in my model, I've got a bit of a different approach to the other strengths philosophies out there, because I talk about your proficiencies, the things that you're relatively good at and relatively happy doing. They are not firecrackers. They're not cranking you out of bed on a Monday morning, getting super excited about using them. But on a Friday afternoon, when you still need to get stuff done, they're a great place to start, because you can perform well. They're not going to drain you. They become the sustainable foundation that you can then use as a launching pad to head off into your genius strengths flow. Time and space disappears while you're in this thing. And then they also become a soft landing pad that as you come out of flow, you can come back to this place where it's easy. It's a place of ease.
Yes.
But you're still getting stuff done.
Yes, that's a great, you need to have both. You can't only be trying to get into peak performance flow state with your strengths all day. We know it doesn't work. A rugby match lasts 90 minutes.
Yeah.
You'll burn out if you try and do that. So any thoughts on rhythm? So for example, and this might be too far into my, resilience work, but
yeah.
Between 9 and 10:30 a.m. when we're at peak alertness, you focus on using your strengths, engaging your strengths. Then you focus on your proficiencies for a couple of hours, and then maybe a little bit of strengths after lunch. Or is this just getting way too technical?
Well, as someone for whom systematizer is a reputation strength, so it's something I'm good at, but I really, really hate. I rebel against any schedule you place on me unless I can see there's a really good reason for it and it aligns with my values and makes a lot of sense. So I am less focused personally and with my clients on what times you do things.
Yes.
I'm much more about tune into where you're at right now. Because if you had a really crappy night's sleep, that alertness isn't going to be there. So maybe today is not a day for your genius strengths. Maybe today is just a day for proficiencies. It is 100% okay to plod, right? We all need those days to just work through it. We're not going to change the world today, and that's absolutely fine. But then the days where you've had an amazing night's sleep and you had this incredible idea as you drove to work in the morning or fed the animals or whatever, that can carry you through a lot more time in the flow state. And so it's like, okay, so today's a day to just lean into that. But I do talk about the flow and recovery cycle, and I envisage it like a figure eight or the infinity symbol, right? So we go into flow and then we need time to recover, and then we go into flow and we need time to recover. And it might be a lopsided infinity symbol one day, in one direction and lopsided the other way. So it's more about, so it's less about exactly today, hour by hour, what you're doing, and it's more the overarching pattern. Over the last 3 months, have you spent enough time in flow and have you spent enough time in recovery to feel like things are going well for you?
I like that a lot. And having that level of self-awareness to say, well, today is a good day for recovery, or today is a good day for maximizing my use of a particular strength. I use an aura ring.
And we go through seasons too, right? So
exactly.
At the moment, I'm dealing with a recurring foot injury, and that's been a real drain and an intense drain in the last 3 months, 4 months. And so I teach people this stuff for a living, right? And then I had this epiphany that it applies to me too.
I know that feeling. Yeah.
So the other day I was like, oh, no wonder I'm actually not feeling like I'm not getting through the usual volume of work that I would, and I'm not feeling inspired to do the volume of work I normally would. And then I just kind of had this little ding-dong moment of, oh, well, it makes sense because I've got this other thing which is draining some energy and taking some focus and attention away. So it's okay. Where I'm at is absolutely okay. This is a blip in the overarching thread of the universe. So I don't need to push myself. Take this as more of a recovery time. There's a fabulous book called Wintering, which talks about these seasons in our life where actually it's time to shut things down, slow down, hibernate if that's what you need, And then that actually gives you that energy and resilience and everything, so that when springtime comes, you can actually launch into it with everything you've got.
I love that so much. And two insights. I use an aura ring, which is, again, my love of all things biofeedback, but it gives you a daily readiness score. And I find that so useful. I mean, you don't have to listen to it, or you don't have to believe it, but it can help just in terms of, did I recover well from yesterday's activities? And if I didn't, it advises you, take it easy today. And often it'll say elevated temperature, and 2 days later you're sick. And it advises you, take it easy, your temperature was elevated. But I love the idea of wintering as well. And I did that to some degree this year, and it's made a huge difference. You know, I scaled back a little bit, focused on a few core things, and ultimately it makes a huge difference to, you know, I'm ready. I feel much more ready than I was at the start of winter.
Yeah.
Not everyone can do that, of course, but you can do it to some degree, because there are always things in our life that we can control. You know, how much TV do I watch? How much exercise am I getting? How much sleep? You know, usually, unless you've got a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old, that becomes a little bit more challenging, especially with regards to sleep. So thinking about the workplace, what are your thoughts around strengths in a team and leading through strengths?
I think there's so much scope. We have so much opportunity to bring strengths really strongly, if you'll excuse the expression, into the workplace. I did some work last year with a senior leadership team. We were going to do a series of workshops together, and where we started was a mini workshop on strengths discovery. So the team broke into smaller groups, and we did like a group coaching session. And so they laid out their strengths on the strengths matrix from the strengths deck cards. And then I did like a live open coaching session with each person. And what was wonderful was, around the room, someone would say, oh, my top genius strength is such and such. And there'd be like this, oh, yeah, from the other people in the room, like the penny was dropping. That's why that person always brings that particular perspective to our team meetings, is because that's their key strength that they are using. They were able to affirm, yeah, I really see that in you. When you do X, that's because it's that you're playing with that strength. So it becomes this really appreciative experience for everyone in the team. They're actually getting affirmed for the unique piece that they're bringing to the team. I talk often about, in a company of accountants, you don't just have accountants. You actually need someone who's going to do the administration, who's going to do client work, who's going to do your marketing, who's going to do your strategy. And so while the overall purpose of the company is to do great accounting, you need these other strengths to actually make that company sustainable and strong and you know, valuable out there in the community. If we only had accountants working on people's accounts, nobody would know about them.
Yeah.
So it's that whole thing of, you know, actually knitting those strengths together, but also being really aware as a group and individuals what it looks like when strengths are being dialed up too much or they're being underplayed, which can both create risks, but also looking at the balance of strengths in your team. If you've got a team full of strengths around the cognition piece, the thinking piece, you're going to have some really great thinking and some really good discussions about that. But if you don't have some people that have the action strengths, that thinking can go nowhere. So you end up in this loop of just constantly thinking.
Yes.
Conversely, if you are really heavily balanced towards action and there's less around the thinking, you can go off half-cocked, not having thought things through, played out some scenarios to the end. If you do that without, say, relationship strengths, it can feel like you're driving the team and there's no care for the individuals involved. So while I talk about specific individual strengths in the strengths deck, they also have 6 different groups of strengths, the families that they land in. And so actually looking at the balance of the 6 families through the team is super helpful. Because let's say we don't have a lot of moderation strengths in the team, chances are we're going to go all in on stuff. We're not going to hold back. And so we actually can stop and say, okay, so we're all likely to dive on in. What would someone with a moderation strength suggest that we do here? So even if you don't have the strength in the team, you can bring it in through a bit of a thought exercise. Yeah.
This is
and
important.
So you start filling in any of those holes that you've got, the gaps that you've got. You can actually take some action to fill it in through your thinking.
And so you can create an inventory of strengths in your team. Look, where are we, for lack of a better word, lacking? Or where do we not have enough strengths? And then consciously say, well, if we did have these strengths, what would we do? And I see it often, especially in firms like accounting firms or tech companies, a lot of cognitive strengths and far fewer emotional competencies, empathy, for example, or kindness, compassion. And as a result, you end up with a lot of conflict and friction within the organization because there's not enough people skills. In that situation, would it be good from a recruitment perspective to say, hey, we actually need someone who's a bit of an integrator to come in with those strengths to bring us back together? Or would we try and develop those skills, but remembering that you can't always, for an accountant to develop strong EQ might not be a good fit? What would be your thinking?
It can be tricky trying to recruit strengths in.
Yeah.
Partly because a lot of people don't actually have the language to be able to articulate those strengths. And also the typical way we recruit doesn't actually make a lot of room for strengths. We tend to recruit for technical skills.
That's it.
The hard measurable stuff. There are two groups in the strengths deck which are harder to gauge, which is the relationship strengths, although you can get to that through tell me about a time when you had a conflict with someone, what did you do? But particularly the essence strengths, which are more someone's way of being, those ones tend to feel too touchy-feely for most businesses to actually talk directly to, and yet they are absolutely vital for good team functioning. The thing is, I've never seen a team that's completely missing one of the groups of strengths.
Okay. Yeah.
There's always people there that have those strengths. They might be lower down. They might not be the more frequently used ones. But it's about being really intentional about how you use the strengths. So if it's like, okay, so Brad's got a real thing for compassion and kindness, how can we bring that into the conversation? So we're thinking about taking a new strategy, which is going to mean that some of our customers aren't going to be very happy with us. So Brad, thinking about those strengths that you bring, what do you think we could do here?
I like that.
So it's actually really intentionally calling it out.
Yes. But first you have to actually know what everyone's strengths are, which I think is the important first step. So considering leaders, especially within an organization where you've got strong technical skills, they need to promote someone to team leader, manager status, and they promote it based on how good they've been, their ability to do something very specific. Now they're a leader. What happens next? In my own work, I've seen the middle manager layer suffering more than anyone else. The exec team usually do okay in terms of well-being. The workers, depending on the context, do okay, but those middle managers seem to suffer. Any thoughts? Why?
Yeah, having been one of those suffering middle managers, I know what that's like. And it's super, super common. So if you're feeling like that, you're a middle manager and you're feeling the squeeze, you're not alone. That's really, really normal. Partly it's the way we structure organizations, and partly it's the way that we put people into those roles. So you just mentioned there, they're technically very competent. They're a doer. They get stuff done. And we go, oh, they'd be fabulous leading that team because we want everybody to be like that. So we promote them, we pay them a bit more, we give them a new title, they've got a new job description, we say, see you next month for your one-on-one, we'll talk about how you're going. And we haven't actually given them the skills they need in the incredibly different role that we've just put them into. Even if they're a working team leader, so they're still doing the doing, the people stuff is not innate for most people.
Yeah.
And so it's actually, we need people to understand how to have difficult conversations. We all avoid them. We don't like feeling uncomfortable. So we don't have the conversations, partly because we feel uncomfortable just about talking about that topic, but also we don't know how to start the conversation. We don't know how to frame it. We don't know how to guide it. We don't know how to gain agreement. And so these are all skills that can be taught. Absolutely. Some people will pick them up more easily than others. Likely that will come back to this leadership they've seen modeled and their particular combination of strengths. But everybody can learn how to do this stuff better. And so challenge in New Zealand is we have small organizations predominantly. They don't have big HR departments. They don't have big learning and development teams who can frame up a whole bunch of courses and workshops and do coaching in the workplace. So there is a real gap here. But that said, there's a ton of really good information online. There are online courses that you can do for free. There are videos, there are workbooks, there are amazing books that have been written about this stuff. And so anything you do in this space is going to be better than nothing. But the more you can actually create a pipeline where we're not just going, oh, we have a vacancy, quick, let's put Brad there.
Yeah.
But actually say, Brad seems to be not just good at his job, but he seems to have a bit of that people stuff going on. What could we do to help him develop those skills now before we need to put him into a leadership role, so that when he goes in, we haven't set him up to fail. He's actually already had some practice, been able to nurture and develop some of those skills. Okay, you'll still make a ton of mistakes because we're human. We don't pick things up on the first go. But all of this stuff is learnable. And I know that because I've learned it. I was a terrible manager when I first started. Absolutely awful in some respects, to the point that one of my bosses pulled me into her office and said, Daria, you're being a swear word. Nobody is enjoying working with you.
Oh, no.
Which was horrifying to hear, but there were two really cool things about it. Number one, that was the only way she could have gotten my attention because I thought I was doing a great job. So if she'd just given me some soft, gentle feedback, I would have brushed it off. And number two, I know she said it with love and concern for me because her very next words were, so we're going to work on fixing that together.
Nice.
And then she coached me and helped me develop the right skills.
What are some tips for a person who needs to have a difficult conversation as a leader? Do you have any tips?
Yeah, a bunch. It's a really big topic, right? But first of all, check yourself. So that's, what is your intention for the conversation? Because sometimes we go into conversations wanting to win them, and that is not going to help. But if your intention is to help the other person, to support them and serve them by having this conversation, bringing this matter to their attention and helping them address it, you don't just do a dump and run. Brad, you suck at leadership.
Yeah.
That's my feedback. That's not helpful.
No.
So it's, getting the intention really clear and being prepared to make an investment in the person to help them fix whatever it is that you're bringing to their attention. Knowing the other person as well. So we all have kind of trigger buttons, hot points, things that are going to make us instantly clam up and get defensive. And so if you can avoid that stuff as much as possible, then the conversation's going to go a bit better. And then being really intentional on how you're going to have the conversation, when and where. So I was taught years ago the Friday afternoon bomb. So you grab them at like 3:00 on a Friday, give them the bad news so that they've got the weekend to calm down. But
So
actually
terrible.
people just stew for the weekend.
Rumination all weekend. It's the worst.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I apologize to everyone that I Friday afternoon bombed in my career. I now realize the error of my ways. So timing is really important. Also, first thing Monday probably isn't going to help. People are just trying to get themselves back into the groove and figure things out. What's the week look like? So being clear about the timing. Where do you have it? Calling someone into your office. There's a real power dynamic anyway if you're someone's leader or manager and you're going to have a conversation. So doing it on your turf can make them feel extra uncomfortable. So a neutral meeting room is helpful. I heard a tale the other day of someone giving someone some really clear, direct, very negative feedback in a cafe. where they were seated around with other people. Bad, bad, bad idea. Think about how you would want
that's
someone to have that kind of conversation with you.
Yeah.
Yep. Confidentiality, you know, trying to avoid shame as much as possible. So, you know, we take it away from the work area where we do our work. You know, it's about having a calm conversation with evidence. Hey, Brad, in that meeting, when you said X, the impact on so-and-so was Y, and that can really create problems long term. What can you do differently so that you can still get the outcome you need without kind of trampling on people? An actual mutual brainstorm. So it's not me saying to you, change this, do this. It's this is what I've noticed and this is the impact. So now let's figure out together what you need to change. And then we talk about what do you need to do and how can I support you? So what do you need from me? And then also building in a check-in. So, hey, let's come back together in a couple of weeks and we'll talk about what's been going on, what's been tricky, what's gone well, what you need to tweak. So it becomes a collaboration rather than an accusation.
That's really useful. And even just the way you described it, you feel like, okay, we can work from this. It's not you are wrong because of whatever, in which case I go into fight or flight mode or freeze mode, even worse. Then our brains are not working properly. It's a kind of like, hey, look, here's the situation. Here's what's happened. Here's how it's been perceived. What can we do together? I really like that. Yeah.
And also being prepared that you might be wrong.
Well, this is true.
Because we only have our perceptions, right? So if I perceive in that meeting, when you said X, Y was the impact because I saw someone's facial expression and I thought they closed down. And if I say that to you, but I'm holding it lightly and saying, look, this is what I saw. What do you think? What did you notice? Have you had a conversation with that person since then? Because unbeknownst to me, they might have come and said to you, hey, Brad, it really sucked when you said that. And you've already worked it out between you. If I come in and impose this, you know, here is a problem and assume that there's a problem, then I'm also creating that disconnection and disengagement rather than, hey, I noticed this, you know, let's talk about that. And you go, oh, I really put my foot in it. And actually I've gone to the person and apologized and we've talked about how I can phrase that better in the future. Oh, okay. Can I help in any way? What can I do?
Yes, exactly. I had someone come to me not that long ago and say, so I'm trying to understand the tension between us. And I was like, is there tension? Like, I didn't actually even realize that, which is, it's interesting when that happens too, because then I go, well, maybe what am I projecting out into the world? It's good to be able to step back and take stock of that before going in and shouting and screaming. Interesting. What does a successful life look like for most people? What are some of the ingredients that drive, you know, a life that's meaningful, fulfilling? I guess the ancient Greeks called it eudaimonia, flourishing. What are some of those ingredients from your perspective?
So the things that come up in my work with teams and with individuals is people want to feel like they're actually having a positive impact. Doesn't have to be big. It might just be that the work they do makes someone else's work easier. For other people, it's changing the world. So it's not about the scale of the impact. It's about feeling like where I am right now is making a positive difference. And sometimes that's not at work at all.
Yeah.
Work might just be a means to fund the other stuff. And that's totally okay. I never bought into this idea that people should all be wanting to grow and progress their careers. No, some people just want to come to work, do their job, you know, have some decent relationships at work, but their focus is with their family or their community. And so it's understanding what for you is meaningful rather than what the latest influencer on Instagram or TikTok or whatever your platform of choice is. And a lot of that comes back to the values, right? Like what is really important to me? What are the guiding principles in my life? And how can I live and work in accordance with them? Relationships, you know, we know that loneliness is super, super bad for us mentally, physically, emotionally. So being connected in meaningful give and take ways is super, super important for people. And play. As adults, we're not very good at it a lot of the time. We get really serious, but none of us gets out of this alive. So why not play along the way? And I saw a beautiful LinkedIn post recently of someone, she jumped on a swing. She saw a swing in a playground and she jumped on it. And someone else was walking through a park and saw the dandelion hedge, once it's gone to seed. And she wondered if 30 years later, blowing a dandelion head would still bring her joy. And it did. And so it can be just these little micro moments. And we can do that play on our own, blowing the dandelion head, or we can play together board games, playing with your kids, your nieces and nephews, doing imaginary games. There's so many different ways, a bit of laughter in the workplace, all of these ways of bringing play, bringing back that sense of the inner child who's free, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, I think how could we inject a playful micro habit into every day? Wouldn't that be a practice that could just uplift everyone? I think I saw on LinkedIn recently, Professor Amy Cuddy from Harvard was talking about glimmers. Have you heard about this phenomenon or this? Yeah, it's so interesting to purposefully have glimmers, which are the opposite of triggers, to bring you back to that state of calm. But I really agree. Play is a missing ingredient.
Yeah, and I'm reading a book with my book club at the moment called Joyful by Ingrid Fattel-Lee, and she talks about 10 aesthetic qualities that bring us more joy.
Okay.
And one of the chapters, it's a chapter we're doing shortly, is on play. But the earlier chapters, one of them was energy, which she talks about light and color. And it is literally changing what I'm doing. So I bought this top, this beautiful bright purple top, as a result of reading that and going, it literally leapt out at me when I saw it on the rack. I wasn't looking for a top. I just happened to be wandering through the shop looking for something else. I saw it, it leapt out, and it brings me joy when I put it on because it's bright, it's light, it's one of my favorite colors. And so it's such a micro thing, but it's a glimmer. It's a little something that makes me smile. I've been buying knitting yarn like it's going out of fashion in really bright colors because my last couple of projects I realized have been very muted colors. And even just looking at the array of the colors of the knitting yarn together, I don't even have to knit it to get joy just looking at these colors that sparkle off one another.
Your book club sounds quite amazing in that you read the types of books that I'm certainly interested in, but also discuss the key topics. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Your book club.
About the book club?
Yeah.
So we call it the Personal Mastermind.
Okay.
We're a relatively small group. We've been going for a couple of years. It's ended up as a women's book club, which has been really fun and interesting. So we meet for an hour once a week on Zoom on a Friday morning, and we go through a chapter or two of the current book. So we take about 2 months to get through a book, and we just talk about what we learned in the book, what stood out for us, and how we're applying it in our own lives. And of course, we don't apply everything.
Of course.
But each week, there's some really amazing conversation, or someone's had an insight, or they've tried something and they share with us how it's gone. And it is literally one of the highlights of my week. And the funniest thing was, we always have these lovely conversations. But our first week, before we even dived into the first chapter of Joyful, there was just this higher positive energy in the conversations as we checked in anyway. And so we've just been noticing this last couple of weeks just how much joy there is in coming together with a group of people who are there to support one another, to grow personally. There's an amazing vulnerability in the group. People share if they're having a really tough time. People will talk about that, and there's just nothing but love and support. And that kind of goes back to our meaningful life conversation as well, right? That connection, that being seen and accepted and loved exactly as you are right now. You don't have to be or do anything. Just by being here, you have that. It's powerful.
I love that idea so much. It's something that I would like to integrate into my life, aligned with that value of curiosity and connection and meeting people and growing together without huge commitment. It's just reading a book, but you've got this community. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Daria, thank you for your time. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
No final thoughts other than that this has been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you about this stuff.
Excellent. And people can find out about you on your website in addition to the links in the show notes. Any other places you'd like to direct them?
So I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. I find it's a great way to build connection and community to support one another. So absolutely look me up on LinkedIn and fire me a connection request. I'd love to be connected.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll do this again. I look forward to it. And everyone out there, thank you. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, everyone. See ya.